The alarms inside the Imperial flagship Eclipse Sovereign had never sounded this loudly outside of war. Scarlet warning lights washed across polished silver corridors as officers hurried toward the command bridge. Thousands of crew members stood frozen, watching a holographic transmission that no one dared pause. It wasn't a battle report. It wasn't an assassination attempt. It was far worse. Princess Lyra, the only daughter of Queen Seraphis, ruler of the 12,000 worlds of the Varethi Empire, had disappeared. For 36 galactic hours. Then, she simply appeared again. Not imprisoned. Not injured. Not begging for rescue. She was smiling. The bridge doors slid open. Queen Seraphis entered without saying a word. Every officer immediately lowered their heads. At nearly 7 feet tall, wrapped in flowing white and gold royal armor that shimmered like living starlight, the queen radiated absolute authority. Her silver eyes could silence admirals more effectively than any weapon. She stopped before the holographic display. Play it. The recording flickered to life. A grainy surveillance drone hovered above a small blue and green planet. Earth? The image zoomed into a quiet coastal city. Then a neighborhood. Then, a tiny brick building with a glowing sign. Marco's Pizza. Silence filled the bridge. One officer cleared his throat. Your Majesty, we're still confirming the location. No response. The footage continued. Princess Lyra walked through the restaurant's front door wearing ordinary human clothes instead of royal armor. She laughed. Actually laughed. She sat beside several human children around a wooden table. A middle-aged man slid a steaming pizza into the center. Everyone reached for slices at the same time. Even Lyra. She burned her fingers. Hold them back. Laughed harder. The children laughed with her. One little girl handed Lyra a folded napkin. The princess accepted it with an embarrassed smile. The recording ended. No one spoke. Finally, an admiral whispered, "Is that cheese?" Another nodded weakly. "I believe so." Queen Seraphis never blinked. Who is the human? The intelligence minister activated another file. His name is Marco Alvarez. A picture appeared. 46 years old. Former combat medic. Widower. Owner of Marco's Pizza. No military record beyond humanitarian service. No criminal history. No political affiliations. Average income. Average life. Completely ordinary. The queen narrowed her eyes. No one is ordinary if they can make my daughter disappear. The bridge fell silent again. The intelligence minister swallowed. There is more, Your Majesty. Another recording appeared. This one showed Lyra helping wash dishes after closing time. Marco stood beside her drying plates. They talked. No guards. No fear. No translator. Just conversation. The queen's voice grew colder. Audio. The recording crackled. Marco smiled. So, how's your first pizza? Lyra stared at the half-eaten slice in her hand. I thought it would be primitive. Marco chuckled. So? I was wrong. What makes it good? She considered the question carefully. The bread is imperfect. Marco raised an eyebrow. The sauce isn't measured. He nodded slowly. The cheese isn't symmetrical. The children nearby burst into laughter. Marco grinned. And? Lyra looked around the room. Families eating together. Teenagers arguing over toppings. An elderly couple sharing one slice. A tired nurse quietly finishing dinner after work. She smiled. It tastes like people cared. The recording ended. The bridge remained silent for nearly a full minute. Queen Seraphis finally turned. Prepare the fleet. Every officer stiffened. Your Majesty? The humans have manipulated a member of the royal bloodline. But we have no evidence. They have something. Her voice echoed across the bridge. Whether it is technology, biology, or psychological warfare, They possess something capable of changing the behavior of a Varethi heir. She looks toward the stars. I intend to learn what it is. 6 hours later. The largest fleet in Varethi history emerged beyond Earth's moon. Nearly 3,000 warships unfolded from hyperspace. The sky turned silver. Cities across Earth erupted into panic. Satellites failed. Military radar overloaded. Governments declared global emergencies. News channels interrupted every broadcast. No attacks came. No demands. The fleet simply waited. Then one vessel detached. The Eclipse Sovereign. Almost 20 kilometers long. It descended through the atmosphere with impossible precision before hovering above the coastline. Marco looked outside his restaurant window. Customers stood in the street staring upward. Someone whispered, "We're dead." Marco sighed. "I just finished cleaning." The front door chimed. Lyra walked in carrying 2 grocery bags. She froze. Everyone inside looked at her. She slowly glanced toward the window. Then at the enormous ship overhead. "Oh." Marco folded his arms. "Friends of yours?" She closed her eyes. "My mother." The restaurant became perfectly silent. Outside. The flagship opened. A column of brilliant white light reached the ground. Queen Seraphis descended surrounded by dozens of royal guardians. Pedestrians fled. Military vehicles stopped several blocks away. No one dared approach. The queen walked directly toward Marco's pizza. Every step carried absolute certainty. Inside, Marco calmly placed another pizza into the oven. The children who often visited after school sat frozen. One whispered, "Mr. Marco." He smiled gently. "It's okay." Another child pointed at the window. "That lady looks angry." Marco glanced outside. "I've seen hungrier customers." Even Lyra couldn't stop herself from laughing. Then, the restaurant door opened. The little bell above it rang cheerfully. Ding. The most feared ruler in the galaxy stepped inside a neighborhood pizza shop. The smell hit her instantly. Fresh bread. Roasted garlic. Melted cheese. Tomato sauce. Warm basil. For just a fraction of a second, Queen Seraphis forgot why she had come. Then she saw her daughter, holding a slice of pizza, smiling, and offering another slice to her. Queen Seraphis stared at the slice of pizza in her daughter's hand. The restaurant had fallen so silent that the faint crackling from the brick oven sounded deafening. No one moved. No one breathed. Princess Lyra smiled exactly as she had 100 times before. "Mum?" The queen's silver eyes shifted from the pizza to her daughter. "You expect me?" She spoke slowly. "To eat human food?" Lyra shrugged. "I expect you to try one bite." A royal guard immediately stepped forward. "Your Majesty, allow me to scan it for toxins." Marco finally spoke. "If it'll help." The guard removed a small crystal device and hovered it over the slice. Soft blue light swept across the bread. The cheese. The tomatoes. The basil. The scan repeated. Again. Again. The guard frowned. He checked the device. Then scanned it a 4th time. Queen Seraphis raised an eyebrow. "Report." The guard looked genuinely confused. "No poison." Another pause. "No parasites." He blinked. "No nanotechnology." Another scan. "No biological manipulation." The second guard stepped forward. "My scanner shows the same results." Marco folded his arms. "I told you." The first guard looked almost offended. "It's bread." The second guard added, "With fermented tomato sauce." Another pause. "And melted dairy protein." Marco smiled. "That's generally how pizza works." A little boy near the window whispered to his friend, "They're scanning cheese." The entire restaurant tried very hard not to laugh. Even Queen Seraphis noticed several humans hiding smiles. She wasn't amused. What influence have these humans placed upon you? Lyra looked surprised. Influence? You abandoned your escort. Yes. You ignored royal protocol. Yes. You remained missing for 36 hours. Yes. You return? The queen glanced at the pizza. Happy. Lyra looked down at the slice. I know. The queen stepped closer. Explain. Instead of answering immediately, Lyra looked around the restaurant. Families sharing lunch. Workers grabbing a quick meal. A teenager delivering pizzas. Marco checking another pie in the oven. She smiled. Because nobody here cared who I was. The words echoed through the room. Queen Seraphis frowned. They should. They didn't. You are heir to 12,000 worlds. Marco quietly slid another pizza into the oven. They didn't know that. The queen looked at him. You knew. Marco nodded. The second day. Every guard instantly raised their weapons. You concealed her identity. Marco raised both hands. Easy. The queen's voice became ice. Why? Marco answered honestly. Because she asked me to. Silence. I wanted, Lyra admitted quietly, to spend one day where people spoke to me before bowing. The queen's expression didn't change. But something flickered behind her eyes. Marco leaned against the counter. You know what happened when she walked in? Nobody answered. She asked for directions. One of the children laughed. Marco continued. Didn't say she was a princess. No. Didn't demand anything. No. Didn't expect special treatment. No. So I handed her a menu. Several customers smiled. And then? Marco laughed. She spent 15 minutes trying to pronounce pepperoni. Lyra buried her face in her hands. It is a difficult word. It really isn't. The children burst into laughter. Even several royal guards struggled to remain expressionless. Queen Seraphis looked at her daughter. You laughed. I did. You embarrassed yourself. I definitely did. You worked here. Lyra nodded proudly. I washed dishes. Marco added. And she was terrible at it. I improved. You broke 6 plates. They were slippery. They were dry. Another wave of laughter spread through the restaurant. For the first time, Queen Seraphis noticed something impossible. Nobody feared her daughter. They simply liked her. Not because of her title. Not because of her wealth. Not because of politics. Because she had become one of them. The queen had ruled for centuries. She had signed peace treaties. Ended wars. Built worlds. Yet she had never seen strangers treat royalty as family. A little girl tugged gently on Lyra's sleeve. Can I tell her? Lyra smiled. You can. The little girl walked toward the queen. Every royal guard immediately tensed. The child couldn't have been older than 8. She stopped directly in front of the most powerful ruler in the galaxy. Then held up a drawing. It showed badly drawn crayons. A round pizza. Marco. Several children. And Lyra. Everyone had enormous smiles. Even the pizza. At the top, the child had written in crooked letters. Family Pizza Night. Queen Seraphis looked at the drawing. There are only humans here. The little girl pointed. No. She tapped the silver-haired figure. She's family too. The queen stared silently. The child smiled innocently. Mister, Marco says family isn't who looks like you. Marco rubbed the back of his neck. I may have said something like that. The girl finished proudly. It's who keeps showing up. No one spoke. Queen Seraphis slowly lowered her gaze. Centuries of conquest. Thousands of victories. Countless ceremonies. Yet no diplomat. No emperor. No philosopher. had ever described family so simply. She looked at Marco. You taught her this? Marco shook his head. No. He smiled gently. Earth did. The Queen's eyes narrowed. You believe your world has changed, my daughter? Marco looked around the restaurant. No. He pointed toward Lyra. I think your daughter reminded us how easy it is to forget what's important. The room became quiet again. The Queen finally looked at the slice still waiting in Lyra's hand. Slowly, very slowly, she reached for it. Every royal guard gasped. Every customer leaned forward. Marco stopped breathing. The Queen lifted the slice. Examined it. The melted cheese stretched toward the plate. Warm steam rose into the air. She hesitated. Then, the restaurant windows suddenly exploded inward. Glass shattered across the floor. A black armored figure crashed through the doorway. Another landed on the counter. A third appeared beside the oven. Their armor carried no imperial insignia. No human markings. Only the crimson symbol that made Queen Seraph's expression instantly harden. The lead attacker smiled beneath the dark visor. We finally found the princess. He raised an energy blade. And this time, his cold eyes swept across the frightened children. There will be no witnesses. The restaurant exploded into motion. Children screamed. Chairs crashed across the floor. Customers rushed toward the back exit. Marco moved before anyone else. Everyone into the kitchen now. His voice carried the calm authority of someone who had faced chaos before. The children obeyed instantly. Lyra grabbed the little girl's hand. Come with me. The girl clutched her family pizza knight drawing against her chest. I'm scared. I know, Lyra said softly, but I'm not leaving you. The black armored strangers stepped farther into the restaurant. Their leader smiled. How touching. The legendary princess hiding inside a pizza shop. Queen Seraphis took one deliberate step forward. Leave. The command shook the room. The attackers laughed. One of them answered. You no longer command us, Queen. The royal guards immediately formed a defensive line. Blue energy shields appeared with a bright hum. Marco noticed something. The attackers were not looking at the Queen. They were looking at the children. His expression changed. Without thinking, he grabbed the largest wooden table in the restaurant. Help me. Several customers rushed over. They flipped the heavy table onto its side, creating a barricade. Another customer dragged chairs behind it. A delivery driver stacked flour bags beside the wall. Within seconds, the dining room had become a shelter. One royal guard looked at Marco in disbelief. Why are you doing this? Marco stared at him. Because there are kids here. The guard hesitated. Then nodded. Together, human and alien pushed another table into place. The lead attacker laughed louder. Pathetic. Do you think furniture will stop us? Marco smiled. No. It's buying time. The attacker charged. Before he reached the barricade, Queen Seraphis moved. She was suddenly there. No warning. No dramatic shout. One heartbeat, she stood beside the door. The next, she stood directly in front of the attacker. Her hand caught his wrist. The restaurant became silent. The armored warrior struggled. He could not move. The Queen slowly tightened her grip. Metal crack. The attacker's confident smile disappeared. He looked into her glowing silver eyes. For the first time, he looked afraid. She released him with a violent shove. He flew backward, crashing through 3 empty tables. Every human stared. Marco blinked. Okay. That was impressive. One child whispered. She's stronger than Dad. Marco laughed. I hope so. The remaining attackers spread out. One rushed toward the kitchen entrance. Lyra stepped into his path. You're not touching them. He raised his weapon. Before he could strike, something heavy hit him from behind. A pizza tray. The attacker stumbled. Everyone looked. Marco stood holding another tray. He shrugged. Occupational hazard. Another tray flew. Then another. Customers joined him. Pizza paddles. Metal bowls. Flour bags. Anything they could grab became a weapon. The attackers had expected frightened civilians. Instead, the entire restaurant fought back. One elderly woman emptied a sack of flour into an attacker's face. He stumbled blindly. A teenager kicked a rolling dough cart into his legs. He crashed to the floor. The little girl gasped. Mr. Marco. Marco caught another pizza peel. Stay behind the table, sweetheart. We've got this. Queen Seraphis watched in disbelief. Humans. Without armor. Without military training. Without orders. Were risking their lives. Not for their own families, but for hers. The realization struck harder than any weapon. She remembered every intelligence report. Humans are selfish. Humans are divided. Humans only protect their own. Everything she saw shattered those assumptions. One guard looked toward the queen. Your Majesty, should we retreat with the princess? She looked at Marco. He was helping strangers, shielding children, standing between danger and people he had met only minutes earlier. The queen slowly shook her head. No. Another attacker lunged toward the barricade. Before anyone reacted, the little girl stepped forward. She held up her drawing. Stop. The attacker hesitated. She pointed at the picture. We're family. For one tiny moment, even the attacker looked confused. Marco gently pulled her behind him. Nice try, kid. Let's not negotiate with scary people today. She nodded. Okay. One of the royal guards couldn't help smiling. The battle inside the restaurant lasted only another minute. Working together, humans and Varethi guards overwhelmed the remaining attackers. The final intruder realized they had lost. He activated a small glowing device. Queen Seraphis recognized it immediately. No. Too late. The device projected a hologram above the shattered dining room. A towering armored figure appeared. His face was hidden beneath a black helmet. His voice echoed through the restaurant. Seraphis, you have grown weak. The queen stared at the hologram. You? Marco quietly asked. Friend of yours? She answered without looking away. My brother. The room fell silent. The hologram continued. I expected to capture your daughter. Instead, I found you protecting humans. How disappointing. Lyra stepped beside her mother. Uncle Veros. This has to stop. The hologram laughed. No, Lyra. This is only beginning. He looked directly at Marco. Human. Enjoy your pizza while you can. The next time we meet, there will be no restaurant left to hide behind. The transmission vanished. Silence filled the room once more. Broken chairs covered the floor. Flour floated through the sunlight like drifting snow. The smell of fresh pizza still filled the air. Marco looked around, then sighed. He rubbed the back of his neck. Well, I guess lunch is officially interrupted. Even Queen Seraphis laughed. Only for a second. But it was enough. For the first time in centuries, the most feared ruler in the galaxy laughed inside a small human pizza shop. Outside, thousands of Imperial warships waited above Earth. None of them knew that the greatest battle for the future of two civilizations had just begun inside the warmest little restaurant on the planet. Chapter 4: Humanity's Greatest Weapon. The black-armored warrior strained with all his strength. Nothing happened. Queen Seraphis stood perfectly still. One hand held his wrist as effortlessly as an adult stopping a child. The restaurant fell silent. Even the attackers stopped moving. The warrior looked down. His armored arm trembled. Then he looked back into the queen's glowing silver eyes. For the first time, he understood why entire civilizations feared her. Queen Seraphis spoke quietly. You chose the wrong world. With one smooth motion she pushed his arm aside. The attacker stumbled backward several steps, completely losing his balance before crashing into an empty table. Wood scraped across the floor. Every human stared. Marco slowly blinked. Okay. He nodded once. That explains the reputation. A little boy peeked over the barricade. Is she a superhero? Marco smiled. Something like that. The remaining attackers hesitated. Their confidence was gone. One of them looked toward the doorway. Another slowly backed away. They had expected frightened civilians. Instead, they found a queen who refused to retreat, and humans who refused to abandon strangers. One attacker suddenly rushed toward the kitchen entrance. Before anyone reacted, a metal pizza tray spun through the air. Clang! It struck the attacker's shoulder. The tray bounced harmlessly across the floor. Everyone looked. Marco shrugged. Occupational hazard. A second tray followed. Then another. Several customers joined in. Pizza peels. Wooden serving boards. Empty mixing bowls. Even rolled up aprons. The restaurant erupted into determined chaos. No one attacked to hurt anyone. They attacked to protect. An elderly woman pushed a rolling flower cart across the floor. It blocked the center aisle. A teenage delivery driver quickly pulled frightened children behind another overturned table. A father lifted two frightened twins onto the kitchen counter while another customer helped close the swinging kitchen doors. Nobody gave orders. Nobody waited for permission. Everyone simply helped. Queen Seraphis watched in stunned silence. Her entire life she had studied humanity through reports. Humans were divided. Humans argued. Humans cared only about themselves. Every report, every prediction, every warning, collapsed before her eyes. One royal guard stepped beside her. Your Majesty. The princess is secure. Queen Seraphis didn't answer immediately. She watched Marco. He wasn't protecting royalty. He wasn't protecting Earth. He wasn't protecting himself. He was protecting whoever happened to need him. The queen spoke softly. This is why my daughter stayed. Nearby, Lyra knelt beside the little girl. The child still clutched her colorful drawing. Family pizza night. It's okay, Lyra whispered. We're together. The little girl nodded. Mr. Marco says family stay. Lyra smiled. They do. Near the entrance, the remaining attackers slowly regrouped. Their leader raised one hand. He looked around the restaurant. At the queen. At the humans. At the children. Then, he made a different decision. Withdraw. The black-armored figures stepped backward through the doorway. No one celebrated. No one cheered. Everyone knew this wasn't over. Outside, the colossal Varethi warships remained suspended above Earth. Their silver hulls reflected the afternoon sunlight. Inside the restaurant, Marco picked up one of the dented pizza trays. He sighed dramatically. I literally bought these yesterday. Several customers laughed. Even the royal guards couldn't hide small smiles. Queen Seraphis looked around the restaurant. Broken chairs. Flour drifting through golden sunlight. Children slowly coming out from the kitchen. Humans checking on complete strangers before checking on themselves. She had conquered worlds. She had commanded millions. But she had never witnessed strength quite like this. Not strength of weapons. Strength of character. For the first time in centuries, Queen Seraphis bowed her head. Only slightly. Only for a moment. Toward an ordinary human pizza maker. Marco looked completely confused. You're welcome. The queen almost smiled. Almost. Far above Earth. Hidden among the stars. A single pair of crimson eyes watched everything. And somewhere in the darkness, a quiet voice whispered, so, humanity really is different. Silence filled the restaurant after the hologram disappeared. Only the crackling fire inside the brick oven could be heard. Flour drifted slowly through the sunlight like fresh snow. Marco looked around at the broken tables, the scattered pizza trays, the frightened children. Then he sighed. Looks like today is going to be expensive. The little girl raised her hand. Does that mean pizza night is cancelled? Marco smiled. Absolutely not. A few nervous laughs escaped around the room. Even after everything that had happened, humans were still thinking about dinner. Queen Seraphis watched every face in the restaurant. No one blamed Lyra. No one blamed the Empire. Instead, they began helping each other. One customer swept away broken glass. Another repaired an overturned table. Someone handed water to a frightened child. Within minutes, the restaurant felt alive again. Not because the danger had disappeared, because people refused to let fear decide what happened next. The queen turned toward Marco. Why are they rebuilding? Marco looked confused. Because this is our place. Your enemy threatened your world. Marco nodded. That's true. You could all leave. He looked around the restaurant. Or we could stay together. That's usually worked better for us. The queen lowered her eyes. For centuries, every civilization she had ruled had depended on strength. Power. Fear. Control. Humans were different. Their greatest strength seemed to come from something much simpler. Community. One of the royal guards approached. Your Majesty. The fleet awaits your command. One order, and we can level every enemy fortress before sunrise. Queen Seraphis remained silent. Her eyes slowly moved across the restaurant. The little girl was coloring a new drawing. Marco was cleaning flour from the counter. Lyra was laughing with several children. She finally understood. This was what her daughter had found on Earth. Not better technology. Not secret weapons. Not political influence. Home. Far above Earth. The Imperial fleet waited. Thousands of warships floated across the blue sky. Admirals stood ready for war. Then the Queen's voice echoed across every ship. Cancel the invasion protocols. The bridge officers froze. Your Majesty? Did you say? Cancel them. All weapons return to standby. Recall every assault squadron. Earth is no longer under investigation. It is under Imperial protection. The transmission spread across the fleet. Shock turned into silence. No ruler had ever declared another civilization protected without demanding tribute, taxes, or surrender. Queen Seraphis continued. From this day forward, any attack against Earth shall be considered an attack against the Varethi Empire. Inside the restaurant, Marco looked toward Lyra. Did your mom just adopt an entire planet? Lyra smiled. She kind of did. The little girl clapped excitedly. Does that mean she's coming to pizza night again? The queen looked down at her. If I am invited. The child laughed. Everyone is invited. Marco pointed toward the oven. Good timing. Your pizza is finally ready. Several customers stared. You're serving pizza now. Marco shrugged. The galaxy almost ended. That doesn't mean dinner has to. Laughter filled the restaurant. The queen accepted the fresh slice from Marco. This time, no scanners. No hesitation. She took her first bite. The room waited. The queen chewed slowly. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. I understand now. Marco smiled. Understand what? She looked around the restaurant. This meal was never about bread, or cheese, or tomatoes. It was about sharing something simple with people who expected nothing in return. The little girl nodded proudly. That's what family does. The queen smiled. A genuine smile. The first many of her guards had ever seen. The royal guards exchanged stunned looks. One whispered, Has anyone ever seen Her Majesty smile? Another quietly answered, Never. Outside, Thousands of alien warships began ascending into orbit. One by one, the massive vessels disappeared into hyperspace. The skies above Earth became blue once more. News broadcasts around the world struggled to explain what had happened. No cities had fallen. No armies had fought. No governments had surrendered. Instead, the greatest invasion fleet in galactic history had left after eating pizza. Weeks later, Marco stood outside his restaurant hanging a new wooden sign beside the entrance. It read, "Official friend of the Varethia Empire." Below it hung another smaller sign, "Every Friday family pizza night. Reservations recommended." The restaurant had never been busier. Humans, aliens, travelers from distant worlds. Everyone sat together around the same tables, sharing stories, sharing food, sharing laughter. The little girl placed her newest drawing on the wall. This time, it showed Earth, the Varethia Empire, Marco, Lyra, Queen Seraphiz, children from different worlds, and one enormous pizza floating between the stars. Across the top she had written, "The day pizza saved the galaxy." Queen Seraphiz looked at the drawing, then at Marco. "You have changed the future of my empire." Marco smiled while sliding another pizza into the oven. "I didn't do anything special. I just made dinner." The queen gently shook her head. "No, Marco. You reminded an entire galaxy that peace is not built by those who win wars. It is built by those willing to share a table." Outside the windows, children from Earth and the Varethia Empire chased one another beneath a bright blue sky. There were no soldiers, no fear, no walls between worlds. Only laughter, the smell of fresh pizza, and the beginning of a friendship that would be remembered for generations.